Today for our daily cancellation, I want to bring this full circle and return to the subject we opened the show with. I believe, as you know, that there needs to be a federal ban on gender transitions for children. Actually, I think there should be a federal ban on all gender transitions for everybody, children and adults alike. It should not be legal for a doctor to sexually mutilate anyone, no matter how old they are. Doctors should be legally barred from performing Frankenstein medical experiments on their patients. And it's especially evil to do when the patient is 13 years old, but it isn't suddenly okay or medically valid if the patient is 33 years old. However, I do believe in taking what you can get, in any fight, working incrementally towards your ultimate goal. And all that means is that you have to choose the best available option at any given moment. A full ban on medical transitions for everybody is not available right now politically, so we'll start with the most important thing, which is protecting children. On that end, I want to deal with the most common objection I still hear to my position and the position of all sane people that child gender transition should be banned across the board. And it's not even an objection, really, so much as essentially a delaying tactic. It's kind of an argument for stalling, for refusing to charge ahead and do the right thing. And I've heard this argument a lot. I anticipate that we'll probably hear much more of it. It'll be the main point of resistance from some Republican members of Congress to the idea of passing a federal ban. So I think it's worth addressing here again. And in order to address it, I'm going to use this tweet from somebody named David Crabb to frame the argument. He responded to me on Twitter yesterday with this point. I have no idea who this guy is. He's not anybody important. It doesn't matter. But he lays out the argument that I want to refute, if you can even call it an argument. But again, hear this all the time. So here's what he says. Quote, right, let's talk science, real science, not the ideological hand-waving Walsh is peddling. I've read the studies, I've seen the data, and here's the truth. The long-term effects of gender-affirming care on children are anything but settled. That's the problem. Anyone pretending we have complete understanding of the consequences is lying to you. When it comes to irreversible interventions, hormone blockers, surgeries, or sterilization, we have a duty to stop and scrutinize before charging ahead. Protecting children means ensuring we don't sacrifice their future health, fertility, or mental well-being on the altar of ideology. Science demands caution, not dogma. Gender dysphoria is real and deserves compassion and treatment, but pumping kids full of hormones or steering them towards permanent surgeries before they're even old enough to vote, that's not compassion, that's reckless. If Walsh were serious about protecting kids, he'd lead with nuance and evidence, not sensationalist rhetoric. Instead, his approach polarizes the debate and shuts down honest inquiry. So let me be clear. We're not saying never, but we are saying not now. Science should guide policy, and right now the science says slow down. No, I'm saying never, David. I'm not saying slow down. I'm saying stop. I'm saying stop and never start again. That's what I'm saying. That's what those of us who are sane and have functional moral compasses are saying. You know, what I just read is exactly the kind of attitude that put us in this position in the first place. This is precisely the reason why we're in a situation where we have to pass a federal ban on butchering children to begin with. It's not because of the radicals who are passionately in favor of sexually mutilating minors. Yes, they're the ones who actively push the agenda, but there aren't enough of them to accomplish anything. There aren't enough true believers in gender ideology. There are very few actual true believers in gender ideology. Only the most hopelessly deluded actually believe in the doctrines of gender ideology and therefore actively push it. They aren't numerous enough or powerful enough. In order to get us here, it required a lot of people with this guy's attitude. It required many, many people who should know better, but lack the spine, lack the common sense to say, no, absolutely not. This is not happening. We won't let you do this. Instead, so many people took this approach. They said, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about this. The science isn't settled. I think we need more studies. Let's slow down. Let's just see. That is precisely the attitude that has allowed thousands of children to be permanently disfigured and physically destroyed. So let me say this. I don't care about what you call settled science or unsettled science. I don't care. What the hell does it mean for the science to be settled anyway? All it means in practice is that a bunch of billion-dollar organizations with a financial stake in the issue have come out and all agreed that a certain thing is so or isn't so. Science is settled, practically speaking now, by a majority vote of self-appointed experts who are financially incentivized to come to that conclusion. I don't care what they say is settled. And this is a real paradox for people who still want to trust the experts and talk about settled science, and yet who at the same time want to take kind of the middle of the road approach here, the kind of slow down approach to gender butchery. The paradox is that the so-called experts, many of the major medical organizations, many of the largest and most allegedly reputable hospitals in the country, all came out within the last few years and said that, yes, it's a great idea to sterilize and castrate children. They didn't just say that it's a great idea, they've been doing it. So if your position is that the science isn't settled and we should slow down and do more studies, then you are already contradicting the so-called experts. You are already in a position where you don't trust them. Let's talk about something that affects all of us, taxes. The October 15th deadline is passed, and if you're not prepared, you could be in for a world of hurt. Do you owe back taxes? Are your returns still unfiled? Did you miss the deadline to file for an extension? Now that we're past October 15th, the IRS is probably gearing up for some aggressive enforcement. And trust me, you don't want to be on their radar. We're talking wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, or even property seizures. It's not pretty, folks. But before you start panicking, there's still hope. Tax Network USA has helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt and filed over 10,000 tax returns. These guys specialize in reducing tax burdens for hardworking Americans like you. Look, I get it. Dealing with the IRS is about as fun as a root canal, but ignoring the problem won't make it go away. So here's what you need to do. For a complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000. Visit the website at tnusa.com/Walsh. Their experts will walk you through a few simple questions to see how much you can save. That's 1-800-958-1000, or visit tnusa.com/Walsh. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. If you take any position other than, yes, let's start pumping chemicals into 10-year-olds who say they're the opposite sex, if you take any position other than that, you are now officially staking out ground in direct opposition to many of the organizations that claim to represent science. And you should, because those organizations have destroyed their credibility in a way that can never be repaired. But what that means is that you can't then fall back on the let's do more studies thing, because who the hell do you think is doing the studies? Who's funding them? It's the very organizations and groups whose fundamental credibility you have already rejected, and for good reason. Because, by the way, we could talk about how, well, there is not really a consensus of the experts. There's plenty of organizations who don't agree with this, and we talked about it in the opening. But it's also true that, especially in this country, a huge number of the once reputable, once we thought credible medical organizations have come out and endorsed this. Like, we are disagreeing with a huge number of medical organizations and so-called medical experts and hospitals. It's important to acknowledge that. It's scary to acknowledge it, because then you're acknowledging that, wow, these people we can't trust them about anything. I mean, they got this wrong. How could we? They think that there are scenarios where we should try to turn a boy into a girl. How can I listen to you about literally anything? I mean, if I go to you and you tell me I have the flu, how can I even trust that? Well, yeah. I mean, that's the situation we're in. Hate to tell you. But none of that even matters anyway, because studies aren't necessary. I don't need any study to tell me that we shouldn't castrate and sterilize children. In order to study such a practice, we have to first do it to children and then wait around to see how it turns out. That's how you study it. Children are not lab rats for medical experimentation. If you are a decent human being with a functioning brain, again, you understand intuitively that mutilating children is always wrong 100% of the time under any and all circumstances. The other side of this debate hasn't come up with an even halfway plausible reason why it would ever be medically necessary to inflict this treatment on children, even in theory. Their entire argument is, hey, maybe it will help kids in some unspecified way if we permanently disfigure them. Let's do it to thousands of them and find out. If I have to explain to you why that reasoning is deeply flawed, you are not a serious person, and you're not even worth talking to. We got into this position in the first place because so many people were not willing to listen to the testimony of their own common sense. Maybe it's because they were too afraid. Maybe it's because they didn't care enough. Because they weren't the ones being mutilated. Because something tells me that they would not have accepted this logic if it applied to them. Okay? If the medical establishment came to you and said, we think it'll benefit you if we lock you in a cage and feed you dog food for the next 6 months. Something tells me you would not say, well, okay, I mean, the science isn't settled on that yet. It might benefit me in some unknown way. Let's go ahead and do it and see how it turns out. More data is needed after all. You wouldn't say that. You would say, no. What? I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? No. The medical establishment, now they might rightly point out to you that, well, you have no proof. You have no studies of your own. You can't prove that it won't benefit you to be locked in a cage and fed dog food. You can't demonstrate with data and research that such a procedure would be unhelpful. You've never even locked any other person in a cage and fed them dog. How do you know? They could make that point, but you would not be persuaded because your basic common sense tells you that there is nothing to be gained from something like that. You know ahead of time, with no data, with no research, with no studies, that a countless number of things are harmful and bad and shouldn't be done. There's countless, infinite number of things that you know without a shred of data, without one study, you still know it's bad. Have you ever read a study that proves it's a bad idea to bathe in gasoline? Or to shave with a chainsaw? How much research has been done on those questions? The science isn't settled, folks. How can you know for sure? Well, you know because you aren't insane. Because you are a human being with a mind and a basic capacity for discernment. That's how you know. That's also how we know that chemically castrating and sterilizing children is an act of abject evil. We know it because we know it. Because to not know it is to be insane. That's all we need to say, or should have ever needed to say. If not for people like our friend David and the many people like him, who are all today, unfortunately, canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.